The cult of Diet Coke, one of the most rabid fan bases on the planet. But why? What is it about this drink in particular? It's not the taste, it's not that it's got people addicted to the soda. In fact, it was never just a soda. And today, I'm exposing it for what it is. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the show you enjoy just for the taste of it. And today is a bit of a personal mystery for me, because I'm a Coke Zero kind of guy. I've talked about my Coke addiction on this channel before. Whoa, just heard it. Let me rephrase. Coca-Cola addiction on this channel before, and how after one of my best friends gave me an intervention, I switched over to Zero. I picked Zero because I never really got the Diet Coke love. It just tastes so off to me as someone that adores the taste of regular Coke. So you can imagine that me and the one who came before had some heated debates about which was better. And it's not just him. The whole fan base of Diet Coke drinkers is on a whole nother level. Which side do you fall on? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let me just say that from the outside, the cult of Diet Coke is fascinating to observe. There's a whole community of people who bond over their unquenchable thirst for the drink. There are numerous celebrities that stan the brand, including Ben Affleck, who has a Diet Coke soda fountain in his office, and Tom Hanks, who pioneered a mixed drink called the Diet Coke Pain. No, you heard that right. It's a drink that's 1 part Diet Coke and 1 part champagne. Diet Coke Pain. Why? The cult power is so intoxicating that recently a YouTuber was arrested in India for setting foot on a forbidden island in an attempt to leave a can of it as a gift for a protected indigenous tribe. Bruh. So what gives? Why is it that this drink is put on a pedestal by so many consumers? Well, today, that is what I aim to uncover. Let's rewind the clock all the way back to the dawn of diet beverages, the mid-1900s. Technically, the first commercial diet soda was the Spanish drink La Casera, a zero-calorie citrus beverage, kind of like Sprite, that hit shelves in 1949. The first diet soda in the States, though, was 1952's No Cal, a ginger ale made specifically for diabetics. And that's an important note. These early diet sodas were created not for weight loss, but so that diabetics could partake in the growing soda craze. This is also true for the first Diet Cola, Diet Right by RC Cola, which became commercially available in 1955. However, Diet Right would soon learn that there was an untapped market of health-conscious soda consumers, so it broadened its horizons and became the first soda marketed as a healthy alternative to other brands. By 1962, it was the 4th highest-selling soda behind Coke, Pepsi, and its big brother, RC Cola. The massive success of the niche beverage raised some eyebrows over at Coke and Pepsi, and within a year, both of them had diet beverages of their own. And while you might think this is where Diet Coke enters stage right, you'd be wrong. You see, both Coke and Pepsi were afraid of diluting their name brands on a potential passing fad. So Pepsi released their Diet Cola under the name Patio. And Coke, they created Tab. Yeah, that Tab. The soda that you probably only know of because it's infamously the butt of so many jokes. That said, Tab didn't start off as a joke. It started off as liquid sexism. What I mean by that is that while Tab and its competitors were conceived to serve a health-conscious consumer base, they were all aggressively marketed towards body-conscious women. In this era, diet soda wasn't sold on its perceived health benefits. It was a product that could help a lady adhere to beauty standards so that she could land a man. Take this notorious ad, for example.
When you can't be with him, be in his mind. Be a mind sticker with a shape he can't forget.
That's an oof. But despite that, it actually did decently in the soda market against Patio. Sign of the times, what can I say? But it eventually faced criticism due to its primary sweeteners, cyclamate and saccharin. In 1969, a study found that cyclamate increased the chance of bladder cancer in lab rats. This led to Tab's primary sweetener being banned by the FDA. So Coca-Cola switched up its formula to depend solely on saccharin for Tab's sweet taste. This would essentially solidify Tab as a gross tasting drink, because high concentrations of saccharin produce a bitter, metallic aftertaste, an aftertaste that cyclamate had previously neutralized. With Tab now tasting like Magneto's backwash, Coke realized that they needed to change the sugar-free soda game. So they put their top minds on a top-secret mission, Project Diet Coke. That covert team eventually landed on altering Tab's recipe to feature the newly approved chemical sweetener aspartame, and thus Diet Coke was born. Yup, you heard that right. Finally, I have an answer as to why why Diet Coke tastes nothing like the OG. Diet Coke's flavor is actually based on Tab and not classic Coke. That's why there's also Coke Zero now, because it's the sugar-free version of regular Coke, and why I personally prefer it. Diet Coke was unveiled in August of 1982, so if we're looking for the genesis of the Diet Coke cult, this is where it all began. Now, on the surface, how Diet Coke indoctrinated America is pretty simple, but fascinating nonetheless, because if there's one thing Coca-Cola does better than soda, it's marketing. And make no mistake, Coke is the GOAT. After all, there's a reason why Mad Men ends with Dawn writing the Coke jingle. There's a reason Santa put down the milk and cookies for soda. And there's a reason kids say, "Jinx, you owe me a Coke," and not "you owe me a Pepsi," which would truly be the darkest timeline. Instead of targeting just aspiring housewives, Diet Coke's research team identified that baby boomers of all genders and lifestyles were feeling 20 years older and 20 pounds heavier. So they landed on a marketing campaign that would highlight Diet Coke as a great tasting drink that just so happens to be sugar-free, hence the original slogan.
And you're gonna drink it just for the taste of it.
By now, you might be saying, okay, Santi, tons of sodas have marketing. What makes Diet Cokes so unique? Well, I'm glad you asked, disembodied voice in my head, because no soda in history has had the rollout behind it that Diet Coke had. As it turns out, unveiling Diet Coke wasn't the only big event for Coca-Cola in 1982. They also bought a movie studio that year. Coca-Cola bought Columbia Pictures for $750 million. Yeah, as they say, there's no business like show business. While the purchase was mostly driven by a desire to diversify Coke's portfolio, it gave the company direct access to insert product placement into cinema classics like Ghostbusters. But more importantly, it gave Coke access to celebrity influencers. Yeah, influencer marketing long before the days of social media. Reportedly, the only non-alcoholic beverages available at Columbia parties were Coke products. And in Tinseltown, where looks were everything, Diet Coke became the drink of choice. Suddenly, Diet Coke was seen as the accessory to the stars. This, along with vigorous celebrity endorsement campaigns featuring the likes of Whitney Houston, Demi Moore, and comedy legend Bob Hope, made it so that it appeared as if everyone who was anyone was a Diet Coke fan. Heck, even Superman and Batman were hawking Diet Coke by the end of the 80s. And it worked. It became synonymous with a very American brand of glamour. It was a symbol of having your cake and eating it too. If you weren't drinking Diet Coke, you weren't with it. Eventually, Coke realized that they were really bad at picking movies to greenlight, so they sold off Columbia to Sony in 1987. But to their credit, they did make a sizable profit on the venture, and they learned more than enough to keep pop culture in the palm of their hands. By the 90s, Diet Coke went all in on the fashion industry, putting their cans into the hands of models like Kate Moss to really hit home that they were the drink emblematic of the beauty standards of the era. So for the regular person, drinking Diet Coke was the key to being like your favorite celebrity. It made you feel like you were part of an exclusive club, a who's who of Hollywood's hottest. It also just happened to hit in an era of society where dieting and being skinny were all on the rage. Nobody wanted to down the sugar in a regular Coke, so Diet Coke was the answer. If you wanted to be skinny and beautiful, remember, this was the 90s, like the models you see in magazines and TV, then you gotta go out and get yourself some Diet Coke. But that was the 90s, and as physically painful as it is for me to say this, the end of the 90s was almost 3 decades ago. How did the cult persist past that and the problematic standards of the time? The crazy but still logical answer is everyone's addicted. Well, I guess I shouldn't say addicted, because technically the American Psychiatric Association doesn't recognize caffeine or diet soda addiction. But studies are showing that Diet Coke and its ingredients could be affecting us in ways that even regular Coke doesn't. Let's start with aspartame, that miracle sweetener that put Diet Coke on the map. The way artificial sweeteners like aspartame work is that they signal to our brains the sensation of sweetness that we crave from sugar. Contrary to what you might assume, aspartame is actually sweeter than sugar, like hundreds of times sweeter. But this has the benefit of requiring way less to achieve a similar level of sugar rush. This in turn means 1 can is 0 calories. But the downside of those 0 calories happens in our brains. See, sugar in the natural world comes with calories, energy for our body. Our brains have naturally evolved to seek that sugar out. Your brain runs on electricity, like a weird biological computer powered by neurons, aka the tiny messengers that zap thoughts and feelings through your head all day long. These neurons shoot electrical signals down their built-in wiring, which are called axons. Think of them like tiny brain highways, but with fewer potholes and less people refusing to obey traffic laws. When the electricity reaches the end of the line, it triggers the release of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters, and these are the real MVPs. Neurotransmitters are how your brain sends messages messages to the rest of your body, like, hey, you're hungry, or maybe don't eat that gas station sushi. And sugar lights up the highway for dopamine, otherwise known as the happy hormone. But with artificial sweeteners, the same pathways partially light up because your brain is expecting those sweet calories, but it never gets them. So your brain tells you to drink more. Eventually, the calories will come, right? You and I know they won't, but your brain keeps begging you to chug, hoping they will. You're already craving the next sip before you're done with the first one. It's not technically an addiction, but boy, does the shoe almost fit. Then there's the caffeine factor. And this is what really sets the Diet Coke apart from the Coke Zero. Upon investigation, you'll find that one can of Diet Coke has 46 milligrams of caffeine, while Coke and Coke Zero have 34 and 32 respectively. That's between 35 and 43% more caffeine, which means that Diet Coke aficionados develop a heck of a caffeine dependency, especially because they tend to knock more of them back than, say, regular Coke because they aren't worried about the caloric intake. So kicking the Diet Coke becomes a lot harder when you take those factors into account. But this is something that's been talked about before. It still doesn't tell us the whole story, because a slightly higher caffeine level probably isn't the reason everyone loves it so much. After all, it's still less than a regular cup of coffee. And other diet sodas use those artificial sweeteners. Any pseudo-addictive qualities in those sweeteners doesn't explain what's so special about Diet Coke. For that, you actually have to go back to the beginning. Or I guess the beginning is coming back to us. See, back in the 90s, Diet Coke was the drink you needed to have to be part of the exclusive club of the hottest of hottest celebrities, like we covered earlier. Wanted to be like Batman? Diet Coke. Wanted to be that super famous model you saw on every magazine cover? Drink a Diet Coke and you're practically on a first name basis with Kate Moss. But Coca-Cola realized that problematic beauty standards don't make a loyal consumer base. Yet here we are, with a cult on our hands, and a Diet Coke that has been seeing a resurgence lately. Diet sodas in general, in part because of Gen Z staying away from alcohol and becoming more health conscious. So 0 calorie, 0 sugar drinks are the natural sweet alternative. But the fan base seems reinvigorated. How did Coca-Cola finally figure it out? Well, with some help from none other than Kate Moss. Yeah, the same model that drove the Diet Coke frenzy in the 90s is now the creative director for the brand. Suddenly, it was all the rage to be drinking Diet Coke again. Everything from the hashtag Diet Coke break to Diet Coke recipes trending on TikTok. The 90s coming back in nostalgic fashion is also bringing back Diet Coke. Some people have also connected the dots that this is also, once again, happening in an era where things like Ozempic are super popular in celebrity circles. You can argue we're kind of going back to the problematic days where being thin is once again what's regarded as attractive by the Hollywood elite. But it's bigger than that. People probably aren't drinking Diet Coke because they think it'll make them more attractive. No, see, Kate Moss and Coca-Cola have shifted the marketing and perception of Diet Coke. Not gonna lie to you, I was racking my brain trying to figure out what was so special about this freaking drink. And it wasn't until I read about Kate Moss's campaign that it all clicked. Love what you love, by you. It's the campaign slogan that celebrates the loyal fans. It's supposed to speak about the positive and unapologetic attitude of Diet Coke fans. But what's interesting is the last part, by you. Diet Coke is no longer the drink you sip on to be like those movie stars or runway models. Drinking Diet Coke is a part of you. Drinking one is a message to yourself by you. It's genius and a little sinister. What used to be a symbol of a lifestyle you wanted to be a part of is now just a part of you, of your identity. Don't believe me? You know how every now and then Coke will have that campaign of share a Coke with and then have a bunch of names like sis, dad, or sidekick, or even homie? Diet Coke does this too. But as part of their new campaign last year, it added a twist. Instead of share with, they made it Diet Coke break by with individual names. And this was unique to Diet Coke. Regular and Zero didn't take part in it. It's no longer something to share with someone else. It's all yours, and it's by you. It's no longer just a soda, it's personal. That's why it's so hard for so many people to kick the habit. Not because of the artificial sweeteners, but because Coca-Cola has made Diet Coke become a part of the identity of every one of its consumers through very deliberate marketing campaigns. I told you Coke is the GOAT, and this is exactly why. Coca-Cola made sure that you leaving behind Diet Coke is like leaving behind a part of you. Where other diet sodas just try and sell you a 0 calorie, 0 sugar drink, or some might even try to sell you a lifestyle, Coca-Cola has gone beyond that and made Diet Coke who you are. And in a weird way, the cult of Diet Coke is just people who truly love who they are. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Buen provecho. And hey, if you want to quit Diet Coke and go to functional sodas, make sure you click the link on the screen first. And as always, I'll see you next week.